Good evening. Welcome to the April 22nd, 2019 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased to have Pastor T.J. Thompson from the Life Christian Church with us today to lead us in the invocation. So please rise for that and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for our city council and our mayor's office and everybody who assists them. Lord Jesus, thank you for the firemen and the police officers who look after us and protect us. Thank you for everyone who runs our schools, our teachers, all the facilitators. Lord Jesus, thank you that you are in the midst of this city, you are in the midst of this government. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor, for those words. The Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here.
All present. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one this evening. C1 is a proclamation in recognition of National Work Zone Awareness Week, which is April 8th through the 12th, 2019. I'd like to ask Scott Carruthers to come forward from Streets and Drains Operation Manager, and I'd like to present him with this proclamation. Scott, on behalf of the Troy City Council and the citizens of Troy, I'd like to present this proclamation recognizing National Work Zone Awareness Week, April 8th through the 12th, 2019. And I'd like to read it into the record if I could. Whereas, as the Road Commission of Oakland County, better known as RCOC, gears up for road construction season, it joins road agencies from across the country to recognize National Work Zone Awareness Week, April 8th through the 12th, 2019. And whereas, with the return of the familiar orange barrels, motorists must learn to unplug from distractions as they enter work zones, especially when workers are present. And whereas Work Zone Awareness Week is an annual campaign held at the start of construction season to encourage safe driving through road construction sites. The theme for 2019 is Drive Like You Work Here. And whereas road construction workers with the Road Commission from Oakland County, State of Michigan, City of Troy, and private companies are doing their part to build and improve roads and bridges. And whereas road work is a hazardous occupation, with 10 to 15% of work zone fatalities being workers, and 85 to 90% of fatalities in work zone crashes being drivers and passengers. And whereas extra attention is needed to keep everybody safe. With the recent increase in funding, this will be a record year for the number of work zones within Oakland County. More work zones mean drivers can expect to find themselves within those zones more frequently. So now therefore be it resolved that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Troy do hereby proclaim April 8th through 12th, 2019 as Work Zone Awareness Week in Troy. And be it further resolved that we encourage all Troy residents and citizens to slow down and devote their undivided attention in work zones and watch for the men and women who are working to improve our streets, highways, and bridges throughout our community, as well as the entire state of Michigan. Signed this 8th day of April 2019 by myself, all members of City Council, Scott I present this on behalf of City Council, and I know you're accepting it on behalf of all of the workers, correct? Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. Briefly, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of council. Just would like to remind everybody, when you see those flashing lights and those orange and yellow vests and the guys out working, we all have our busy lives and we're on our way somewhere. Those people would all like to get home to their families at the end of each and every day. So just I remind you us all to please be aware when we're in those work zones. Thank you very much.
That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. There are no carryover items, so we will move to public hearings. We have one public hearing this evening, the conditional rezoning application, file number CRJPLN 2018-005, which is the proposed Long Lake Square townhomes, south side of Long Lake Road, west of Livernois, 121 West Long Lake, parcels number 88-20-16-200-007 and -008. Section 16 from R1B, which is one family residential district, to NMM, neighborhood node M district. I see Brent Savanant, our planning director, anxiously awaiting. Let me open this public hearing. Brent, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Slater, City Council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Tonight's presentation will be less of a technical presentation and more of a narrative, because I think it's important to provide City Council and residents with a context of exactly why we're here this evening with this particular project, because there's some recent history that kind of sets the stage for why I'm standing here with this project before you. So brief background, this 1.8 acre site is located on the south side of Long Lake, west of Livernois. It's zoned R1B, one family residential, and the applicant, as you indicated, Mr. Mayor, seeks rezoning to neighborhood node M. And I should state for the record that all the site plan elements that we're going to talk about this evening were voluntarily offered by the applicant as part of the conditional rezoning application process. So the master plan actually defines the intent of node M, and you see a general location arrow on the screen. Essentially, this node is intended to be for new development and redevelopment should be mostly commercial, and we'll get into that a little bit more here in a few slides. But before you, obviously, is an application for residential. So this is the kind of the context I want to provide this evening with the brief history of the applications that we've seen fairly recently. In fact, I think most City Council members will remember this first application. So in 2017, there was a proposed easy storage application. It was also a conditional rezoning application, and you've got a rendering on the screen. It was proposed to be 110,000 square feet and maximum height of 38 feet. So we had a public hearing at Planning Commission and at City Council, I'm sure you remember, and there was a number of issues that were raised by residents. Incompatible use. The height, many neighbors thought it was too high and too massive. It's a really large footprint for a building. But the overall theme that we heard from neighbors was the site should be residential and not commercial. So that's where it gets into conflict a little bit with the master plan. And I don't know if it's as much the fact that there's an error in the master plan as it was that this particular use, the massiveness of the use, and just the significance of this particular use at this particular location, it really triggered a lot of emotions, and it really had a lot of people suggesting that it should be residential. So the application was denied by City Council May 8th, 2017, and the property went back to the market and kind of lingered for a little bit. And then Fast forward about a year later, and we have this application that's before you this evening, although the initial application that's on the screen here is somewhat different. This application was for 30 units, and these units were 34 feet high. Also notice the layout, very basic. You come in, it's a straight shot all the way to the back. So we had a public hearing on December 11th, 2018, and some of the issues that were raised by residents, planning commission, and staff were that there were too many units. 30 just seemed too dense. The units at 34 feet were too tall, and they were taller than the abutting residential to the south, which has a 30-foot maximum height. These are 34 feet. The layout was boring. There was no place to store snow, and there was very limited usable open space for residents. So the Planning Commission postponed this item and asked the applicant to go back and consider all this information, and they did. So what we have before us this evening is a result of all that, the dialogue and the back and forth over the last few years. So the site plan that's before you this evening, notice the revised layout. Instead of a straight shot, when you enter and head south, there's a jog here. So it adds visual interest to the site plan. They also removed 3 units, gets it down to 27 units. The maximum height is 30 feet. That's the same maximum height as for the single-family residential that it's currently zoned, as well as the properties to the south that are zoned R1B. They proposed 35% open space. There's a park area here in the middle for residents. There are areas for snow storage, and there are a total of 68 parking spaces, 2 in each garage, as well as 14 guest parking spaces. So significant improvement, and the long story short is the applicant listened, and it's a significantly better site plan. These are the elevations. I would note that the applicant has voluntarily submitted a color package that shows various colors of paint and siding and shingles, and that's in your packet for your review. And the applicant is here this evening, Jim Clark from Robertson Brothers. He can answer any questions you have. This is a rendering of the layout, very attractive development. So a brief comparison of what can be done under the existing R1B zoning. They could do 2.9 units an acre, or about 5 units on the site by right. They're proposing 27. So it's a difference in density from 2.9 to 14.4. The maximum height's the same. The setbacks are comparable, and the maximum percentage of lot that could be covered by buildings under R1B is 30%. They're proposing about 25%, and they're proposing almost 35% open space, which is a very good figure. These are the standards that you apply for conditional rezoning. I'm not going to read them all. You've seen a lot of conditional rezonings lately, but they basically look at the most important criteria is how it complies with the master plan. It's also special use because of the type of building form. And so these special use standards speak to compatibility with adjacent uses, compatibility with the master plan, et cetera. As I indicated, Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on December 11th. They postponed the item. They held another meeting February 26th, and they recommended approval 6-0. And with that presentation, Mr. Mayor and City Council, City Management recommends approval of the proposed conditional rezoning, approval of special use, and approval of preliminary site plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Any questions from council for Mr. Savidant or Mr. Robertson? Councilman Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Brent. The great presentation. I really like this project. I drove by the site today. I was just curious. There's a wall along the Trevorrow side. Is that wall going to stay there along with the woods features behind it, or is there any plan to change that, or do you know, or is that Trevorrow's area wall anyway? I'm
going to defer to the applicant on this. I've got the site plan in front of me. It's kind of awkward, and he's sitting 10 feet behind me.
Okay. I'll wait for that then.
Mr. Robertson?
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening. Not so fortunate. Jim Clark with Robertson Brothers, 6905 Telegraph Road. The wall is on the hardware site and would remain, although we do have a pedestrian access point where he will lose a parking place, but he said he would like to have the connection of the people being able to walk to his hardware. So we have a connection there and then a connection to the south.
Great.
Awesome.
Somewhere in the middle of the wall, or?
No, just to the north of the wall.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if we look at the site plan, between the two buildings fronting where that parking area is, there would be a sidewalk area.
Okay.
Yeah, right up there. And the wall does not go all the way up to Long
Right,
Lake.
right. Yep, thank you. That's all.
And just, if I could add to that, Mr. Mayor, we do have a letter from a representative of the Trevorrow property indicating they're fully in support of this connection.
Great.
The obvious question is the residents to the south. There were some comments made at the Planning Commission. Are there any letters in file?
No, and if you mentioned the Planning Commission, if memory serves, Mr. Mayor, I believe all the residents, and I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that all the residents that spoke were neighbors to the north. I don't believe any neighbors from the south came to the public hearing, although they were all notified.
Thank you. Any questions from council for Brent? Councilman Henderson.
Just have one question. One of the very first slides you showed was neighborhood node M is to be primarily commercial. This is not technically commercial, it's residential, right? So how does that, what conversation have we had with regard to that?
Well, it's as I indicated, Mr. Henderson, it's a residential use. It's a more intense residential, so it's kind of sort of commercial. We rectify it by. I'm not suggesting it was a mistake in the master plan. I think what triggered a lot of the comment against commercial was the nature and the scope of the project that was before Planning Commission and City Council. I think it's possible that were a project proposed that was scaled back, more geared towards local retail, that type of commercial use would fit better. But I think the developer got very aggressive with the scale and again the scope of what was proposed.
Okay. Just a follow-up to that is, I know some folks that live in the complex on the north side, and there were some questions initially when they first got notification from Robertson Brothers about the project, and I think all of those questions and concerns were addressed. Did you have any feedback at the Planning Commission meetings that would indicate that there was any kind of pushback from those neighbors?
We had the public hearing, the first public hearing in December. We had the second public hearing in February, and I don't believe there were any comments at the public hearing. There may have been limited, but essentially the developer listened, and all of the comments that were addressed by neighbors and addressed by the Planning Commission and in the report were rolled into the design that's on the screen before you. They did a really nice job of listening and proposing a project that was going to work for everybody.
I noticed the folks that were here the first time with the storage facility are not in the audience, so I think that's a good sign. Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Thank you, Brent. I think it's important that staff is recommending this project. That's always important for me. Thank you. I see that Avis Landmesser has signed up to speak on this item. Good evening.
Mayor.
Good evening.
I have brief comments because I don't want you to get a hook to pull me off like last time. I'm sorry. You mentioned just quickly about there was no comment. There was a lady that spoke and said she would be on the northern side who said she would be very much in favor of the proposition if it were not for it was a 3-story. Or if it was 2-story, she'd be happy. So I just wanted to clarify that. We all have our right to our opinions. In this development, however much better thought out than the abomination that now graces the neighborhood node of Square Lake and Livernois, still has the look of Army barracks to me with a garage on the first floor. And it is not at all like the Brick Harrington Charleston residential development just across the street. To much avail, I tried to find out what the right to develop unit number would be for this development if you chose to not consider the 27 units that has been decreased to. But the planning department tells me that there is, quote, no density cap for this proposal. I'm not sure what that really means. I'm sure Mr. Savadant could tell you. Where will these nodes ever end? This is an extension. And by granting this proposal, you will be agreeing that it will now be acceptable to build a 3-story residential unit. And I understand it is lower. It has gone down to 30 feet, which I appreciate, but it's still 3 stories. It will now be acceptable to build a 3-story residential unit between a 1-story Trevaro Hardware to the east, a brick 2-story Harrington Charleston Park development to the north, which I also went to today to look at. A brick 2-story Harrington Charleston Park development to the north, 1 and 2-story residential homes to the south, and the Ridgedale Players to the rest. And I respectfully request, therefore, that you deny this neighborhood no rezoning extension. And I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and return it to the table for a resolution. Councilman Pennington.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move E1, conditional rezoning application file number CRJPLN 2018-005, proposed Long Lake Square townhouses, south side of Long Lake Road, west of Livernois, 121 West Long Lake, parcels 88-20-16-200-007 and 008, section 16, from R1B, One Family Residential District, to NNM, Neighborhood Node M District, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Pennington, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker, that we approve E1, the conditional rezoning application, as read into the record and printed in the agenda packet. Further discussion, Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually had a question. I don't know if someone can answer, if they know offhand. The height of the development across the street, the Harrington, because I seem to recall that it was over 30 feet from our discussion 2 years ago when we were discussing the easy storage.
I don't know. I don't know. I want to say it's 30, but you may be right, Councilman Baker. I'd have to check.
Okay, just curious. If I can continue, to Ms. Landmesser's point, I mean, well thought out. I always picture those being higher than 2 stories across the street. And these seem very comparable to me, and height-wise anyway. So I was trying to figure that out. But
30-foot maximum height.
yeah, that's what I thought.
Is that it?
That's it for questions, but I have something else. Further discussion, if I could.
Councilman Henderson.
The 3 stories, are they 2 stories and then the garage is considered the 3rd story, or are there actually 3 floors above the garage?
I'm gonna ask Mr. Clark to come back up here and give you a narrative of the type of product that he's proposing here.
So as originally proposed, it would be a garage on the first floor and then 2 levels above that. As it's presented to you tonight, the garage is depressed, so it's down 6 feet, and you see 2.5 stories. You'll see the top of a window that's into the garage. From a real estate standpoint, we're not allowed to count that area because it's considered basement in terms of real comp or listing it. So it takes away the very usable square footage on that lower level, now what's called a lower level. So it is truly a 2.5 story. It is at the height of everything around us or below.
So you shaved the 4 feet.
We pushed it out, and we will, as we did on Rochester Road at Bradley Square, all your garages and all your sort of nuisance, if you will be depressed, and what you will see is screening because it's down a half floor. So you'll see you will not see a 2 or 3 story structure as you drive down the street. It is, if you measured it from the back of the garage to the roof, yes, it is. There is an extra floor, not an extra floor, a floor, but it's down below.
Thank you. Other questions, comments by council? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thanks, Mayor. So 2 years ago, it's not really a question. I don't know if you want to stand there the whole time, but 2 years ago, we sat up, 4 or 5 of us voted against putting the easy storage in. And the chamber was full of people who were very vocal about what they thought should go in that property. And this project is what that neighborhood was supportive of at the time. And it's nice to see that although it's been 2 years, we were able to find a new developer, a new project, and have it come in and be proposed as something that seems to be, by the lack of people being here, definitely supported in the neighborhood. I am supportive of this project. I understand Ms. Landmesser's concerns about neighborhood node and the precedent setting, but when we look at our master plan and try to accomplish goals along those lines, this is a much softer and gentler proposal for that piece of property, and I think one that will have good benefits to the city of Troy. Doesn't mean that every project that comes before us like that would have the same, doesn't mean automatically that it means, okay, well, you're going to do that. We still look at every single rezoning, but I am supportive of this project, and I think it's going to be great, and I'm happy 2 years later to be at this point.
Councilwoman Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. I just really want to thank the planning team and our planning commission. I always say that's the most important group in the city doing the work of our city and representing us, and they've done a great job with the developer as well. Thank you so much. Is there a perfect answer all the time? Is everybody happy with every development proposal? No, there's always going to be someone who sees something a little bit different, but the people who live there are the people I'm really listening to, and I've had people approach me, even the first draft of this project, they said this we can look at, and they were interested and eager to see some compromises as what came back, but they wanted to see this type of project. And I think it's important for residents around the city to understand that that's the feedback we're getting. We're not getting emails telling us to turn this down or emails that say they feel it's incompatible. Quite the contrary, I'm hearing how much they feel it is compatible with that node and the look and the feel of that area. So also, sometimes I think it can look like we haven't spent that much time considering something like this. The hours and hours and hours of work that went in leading up to this. I find myself repeating this, but please know that, as council members, planning commissioners, planning staff, and the developer, there's a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes to bring these proposals forward. A lot of detail provided to us. And I think we all, at some point when these are coming before us, we go and stand and look and feel and try to understand where this is going and to the best of our ability envision it. And there was no question that the last proposal, the storage facility, it did not fit when you stood there. This feels compatible to the area. It seems to be the compromise approach to that area that the residents were asking for 2 years ago. And I just really applaud you all for the work that you did to get here. And thank you for it.
Any comments from council? Just to echo that a little bit, this is somewhat what I said at the last meeting, that the planning commission, the planning department do most of the vetting with these projects. And when it gets to us, most of that has been done, and it's brought to us with many changes along the way. And we certainly couldn't do it without them. So my thanks to the planning department and the commission also. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Clark. Please pass along our thanks for choosing Troy. Thank you. I don't see that anyone has signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Does council or administration wish to respond to any public comments this evening?
Mr. Mayor, just one clarification that this is not a 3-story project.
Yes, that's true. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There are no postponed items this evening, so we will move to regular business. I-1A, our mayoral appointments. I would like to appoint James Hatch to the Board of Review for the term that expires 1/31/2022. Steve Gottlieb to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for the term that expires 4/30/2022. And Anthony Rosenblum to the Volunteer Firefighter Incentive Plan Board for the term that expires 4/30/2022.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we appoint the 3 appointments that were read into the record. Any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes, motion passes, and thank you to those 3 gentlemen for volunteering for those important committees. There are no council appointments this evening. I-2A, there are no mayoral appointments or city council appointments this evening. So we will move to I-3. There is no request for a closed session this evening. So next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Anyone wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just need to find out which number it is.
4?
Is it 4? Sorry, you were going so fast.
No, not 4.
No, J. It's J4G, I believe. Yeah.
J4G. Anyone, Councilman Hamilton?
I'd like to pull J04I.
Aye.
Yes.
Anyone else wish to pull an item this evening? Councilman Henderson?
I'd like to move all items on a consent agenda with the exception of J4G and J4I, which we'll discuss later.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Baker that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented with the exception of item J4G and J4I, and with a typographical correction. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's the...
There was one typo.
J2C.
Yep. And then-
J2C and...
And then there was another typo found later in J2B, and they've both been corrected.
Thank you. Any discussion on those items? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. This is regarding the gateway signage, and I'm not completely sure where to start other than, I will say, I know that the city staff's been working on this for a long time, and there's been a committee and a team that's done a lot of work coordinating with the designer to come up with some options. But when I saw this come through in the agenda last week, I couldn't move forward without having at least some discussion on it. And we were presented with this signage first, I think it was in November, and it didn't fully sit right with me then, and I talked to some other people in the community, and they had similar feelings about the design itself, and here it comes before us to approve and to put the signs in, and I don't think I can do it without having further discussions and maybe even a study session on it. Because when I look at neighboring community signage, every city has a different feel and different flair. But my concern with the proposal for Troy is that it may become dated relatively soon, or it doesn't quite reflect the image that we try to reflect along Big Beaver. I forwarded to city staff some of the pictures of the neighboring signs, and everyone here has them. I just think the combination of, the I-75, modern I-75, and some potential signage along the Big Beaver exit We don't know what that's going to be yet. And my concerns regarding the potential design of what we're going with here, not feeling quite right, I think that I can't support it as is. So I guess I'm curious as to other council members' thoughts on it, and if perhaps we can wait a little bit.
Are you proposing to postpone the item for something further, or do you want to have a discussion?
Well, I'm not yet, there's 6 of you could say, no, I'm fine with it, and let's move forward, and then that'd be kind of wasted, but ideally, I think it should be postponed, yes.
Anyone else wish to comment? Councilman Henderson?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree, but I remember when we came up with the logo that we now use on all our letterhead, and when we had those discussions, I think 7 of us had a different opinion as to what that logo would look like. So for us to, as a group, do what a marketing firm is capable of doing and coming up with consensus to do that, I mean, even if it ended up with a 4-3 vote, 4 of us are going to be happy and 3 of us aren't going to be happy about the types of signage. To your point about I-75, that's actually kind of a pretty good idea, only because we don't know we've got some commitments from MDOT to do some signage along I-75, and maybe we could make them look more like that. I don't know, but I don't think the signs that are in the packet today are bad. I think they're interesting. To be able to change them on the fly, I think those are easily changed, especially as compared to some of the stone and brick photographs that you submitted. I think it's easier to change some of the polycarbonate style signs than it is a brick structure or a rock structure. So although I somewhat agree, again, I don't know that we're all as a group are going to be able to come to a consensus to a marketing strategy for signage where it would be better than a marketing firm.
Councilman Hamilton was first.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Baker. I think I like the Big Beaver signs, but the signs that are around the city, I'm really not. I really don't like that. And if a majority of council likes it, I think that's fine. I won't have any objections if that happens, but I would be fine with postponing this.
You would be fine with what?
Postponing this, sir.
For another study session?
I'd have to think about it, but I'm just not ready to vote yes on this today.
Councilwoman Hoderick?
This is one of those areas where I will confess I don't feel like it's my strength. These could be perfect and great, and here I am set to vote. I think what I hear Mayor Pro Tem Baker saying is it's not that we necessarily don't like the idea. We want to be comfortable with the idea. I think some of us, I hear his concern. A lot has gone on in the past few months since the original proposal, and our heads are clearer. I think there are some talented people in the city that can help us confirm, do a sense check that this is the right idea. And, a study session, this is signage. This is gateway signage. We need to get it right. I think just taking our foot off the gas a tiny bit just to confirm that we feel like this is the right direction. And the I-75 modernization project, they had done charrettes that were indicating to them a mid-century approach to the look and feel of I-75 and signage. Taking a few minutes to make sure that this coordinates with that, again, through a study session, just double checking so that the community feels confident that the decision we've made has been well thought out, I think is a good use of our time and tax dollars.
Councilman Pennington.
I don't really care either way. I mean, if you look at it, it's a good-looking sign, but you don't have a 3D. You don't have something you can look at, right there to tell you how much you're going to like it or not like it. It's the only sign of the ones you showed that is backlit. Our sign is backlit, and all the rest of them are front lit. It's modern, but like you said, without having one in front of you, you're not going to be able to tell what it looks like. It is a good-looking sign, but whatever the group wants to do is fine with me.
Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Baker, I understand your concern. This gateway sign is going to be present for at least 20 years, and it's not intended to be replaced anytime soon. So whenever you approach something that's going to be a landmark that will be around for decades, you want a design that will stand the test of time, that doesn't look dated like a 70s tie-dye t-shirt by any means. And I'm not suggesting that this sign will be dated, anytime soon, but when you're talking about a landmark, that is something to consider. I'm not sure a study session with the 7 of us would necessarily yield the right results. I think Councilman Henderson said it well. If there's 7 of us, we'd have 7 different opinions and 7 different backgrounds with an approach to graphic design, and none of us are graphic designers. But perhaps instead it could be a special presentation at a future council meeting. I would support postponing the vote tonight and maybe having a little bit more discussion in the context of a special presentation. I'm not sure a study session would further the conversation productively.
Councilman Henderson?
My apologies to city management, because I know that we kind of gave you the sort of thumbs up November 12th, as I found out today, of 18, to kind of push forward with this, and we all saw the information, but my mind goes back to the note that we got in our packet about the billboard signs. And, it was a nice rendering of it, but, it really didn't penetrate any of our heads about, the magnitude of that specific kind of sign. This is bigger and more visible than those things are going to be. And, then I was reminded by some of the photographs that Mayor Pro Tem Baker submitted, and I've been kind of a close follower of the Golden Corridor in Sterling Heights. And they've taken a big lashing over the last few months since that's been put in. So it would be a benefit to us if we thought through this a little bit more and had some more data. I agree. And I think that we'd be remiss if we did something that didn't jive with what's going to happen on I-75. I think that's a key component.
Thank you. Well, it sounds to me like just about the whole council would like to postpone the item. I certainly do not want to have another study session on this. We already had one, and that was enough for me. This is one of those things for me that I kind of rely on experts to know what things should look like and, what the community's feeling. If something was sitting in front of me and saying, how about if we go towards this better than this, I might agree more with the conversation, but I'm indifferent, quite honestly, to it. I can go either way, but I think it's a disservice to staff when we have a study session in November and there's a 7-0 consensus to move forward with the design, and then at the last hour after we've expended $17,000, I believe.
I'd have to double check.
I would too. Hiring a design firm to do this for us, and then at the last hour saying we need more. I'm not sure what we need more time for. Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't believe we did have a study session on the signage, certainly not in November. That was just a quick presentation. And we were in the middle of hiring a city manager. That was all during that time period. So there were a lot of things going on with the city. I would agree with you that we have a great city staff that works really hard, and we defer to experts all the time. But sometimes you don't realize something until it's right before you at the last minute. And here it is. And I did express some concerns to other council members back in November after after the first presentation, and I had asked city management if they were presented to the DDA, which I know they did. So this isn't completely out of left field. This is something that I've been thinking about for a few months. So I'm thankful to hear that most of you would like to think about it a little longer and make sure we're doing the right thing, because as Councilmember Abraham said, it's likely going to be here for decades. And because of the scrutiny in our neighboring city with the Golden, we'll just leave it at the Golden, I think people pay attention to this kind of thing a little more than they maybe had in the past. So I do want to make the right decision.
Did you want to make a resolution?
Sure, I'd like to move to postpone J4, I lost the letter again. J4G until a time when city management can put together an additional presentation for council.
Support.
No date specific?
I would defer to city management to what works best with their schedule.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilwoman Abraham that we postpone the item until staff feels comfortable with making another presentation to council. Discussion, Councilman Pennington.
Before we vote on that, I'd like to ask city management, is this going to cost us more money if we have to do another consultation with the...
To redesign the sign, are you asking?
Well, I know
Or just to
redesign
delay?
would cost more, but I mean, if they come up in front of us and do another presentation, and, you know, is this...
Well, we don't have in our contract for them to do a presentation, so that would cost more money, yes.
Okay.
But in my mind, we could present what this design was because it generated internally. We just put it out to bid to fabricate it.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the total price to design it was $17,000. I'm just not sure if we billed all of it yet. But we're near the point to let the bid, so you assume it's pretty much used up.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the resolution? Councilman Henderson.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about open-ended resolutions, you know, where we have no date certain, or at least a goal in mind. And this seems to be a real loose goal. Just someday bring us back another presentation. You know, what are we looking for? What does council want? What are we actually looking for in a timeline? I think that's a critical piece. You know, I can just imagine Mr. Miller going back into his office tomorrow and thinking, what in the heck do these guys want from us? So, you know, I support postponing it, but I think there's got to be some specificity to this.
Councilman Hamilton.
I would say at least till after the budget is adopted and all that, so maybe at least 2 council meetings would be my suggestion. Second meeting in May.
City Manager Miller, are you comfortable with the direction that was given to you as to what to bring back?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do know that I have some staff that's going on a lengthy vacation, so we need at least a month or more.
Okay.
First meeting in June? I'm good with that.
Would you like to amend the resolution to be date specific to the first meeting in June?
Go ahead, Ethan.
Is it Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Like
I'm not going to vote for an open-ended resolution like this, quite honestly.
That's fine. I figured city staff would be able to figure it out. So I'd like to amend the motion I just made to a date certain of the first meeting in June, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head. June 3rd. So to postpone this J4G until the June 3rd meeting so that city management can put together a presentation on the signage.
Support.
Okay, that resolution's been submitted by Mayor Pro Tem Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton. Is there any further discussion on that? Councilwoman Hoderick.
To the point that's been making, we do understand, or I do understand, staff has worked hard on this, and it's not as if I have some huge mistrust. I think our role as a council, talk about this a lot. Staff needs to have our backs and we need to have council's back. And because there's been great work put into this and there was great discussion, I think taking time to, remove it from a consent agenda item and actually have a presentation and talk it through is not about us being concerned that staff doesn't have it right. It's me being concerned about really understanding what we're voting for, spending money for, and what the look will be. And it's an effort to support you all in the work that you do so that we're not blindsided with criticism. I think the public needs to understand that we're doing this and see it. And whenever we don't have proper engagement, that's when we end out with Monday morning quarterbacking and criticism. So I think that's my goal, is to feel like we've really properly discussed this so that when we go forward, we're comfortable representing the idea on behalf of staff and the work they've done and on behalf of ourselves. It occurs to me, we ran it by the DDA, and I don't know that this is a planning commission kind of an item necessarily, but making sure that the planning commission is aware of what we've looked at and the members on it. Many of them have tremendous graphic and architectural skills. I just want to make sure all of that's been brought to this party before I say, yep, I'm good. Yes. That's what I'm looking personally for.
Thank you. Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. And, thank you for, reminding both council and residents who are watching that, we did invest $17,000 or set aside $17,000 so a design company could fabricate this sign, make something that's on paper and make it a reality. And we don't take that lightly. But I also don't take lightly investing $80,000 in signs if we can't necessarily agree on it. And it may be that we end up spending no more than what was allocated, which was roughly $100,000 between design, fabrication, et cetera. I think we can manage to probably stay within our budget and come up with something that I think all of us can get behind. So, thank you for reminding us all of our financial stewardship. I think it's something all 7 of us take very seriously. And, that's why I supported postponing it, because $80,000 is not a small sum of money, and we want to make sure that we're doing it right, especially if it's going to be there for decades.
Thank you. Any other comments on postponing the item till June the 3rd? We'll vote on that, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman Hamilton, did you want to discuss JI?
Thank you. I pulled this item because I believe it's my duty to be transparent and open about the details of this vote. Delisio has been our concrete contractor for the last 5 years and has worked with Troy for around 10 years. Delisio's bid in this project is $138,000 better than the next contractor, and this is for a $1.8 million concrete contract for the city for the next year. Many residents of Troy are aware that Delisio's name was mentioned in the court filings for the federal case against Brian Kishnick, the former city manager of Troy that was fired in March 2018. Kishnick is currently serving time in federal prison. According to the sentencing memo, which was filed on January 18, 2019, in September of 2015, Delisio removed and expanded Kishnick's driveway and agreed to pay the city forester for the removal of the tree. Following completion of the work, Delisio provided Kishnick an invoice in the amount of $3,500, which Delisio claimed included the cost of the tree removal. Kishnick, having already demonstrated that he never intended to pay for the removal of the tree, never paid Delisio for the work done on his driveway, nor did Kishnick ever intend to, even after a councilman who learned about the driveway confronted Kishnick and following a conversation with another public official who advised Kishnick to pay for the improvements, which Kishnick never did. Another excerpt from the same sentencing memo on January 18, 2019. On December 21st of 2017, acting under the direction of the FBI agents, Dino Delisio met with Kishnik at the Fogo de Chao restaurant in Troy for a prearranged Christmas lunch. Several other city employees who Kishnik personally invited were also there. Kishnik and Delisio discussed Delisio's contract and the extension of that contract. Delisio expressed concern about council's approval. Delisio paid for the food and alcohol that was consumed in an amount totaling $1,287.30. After the festivities, Delisio and Kishnik retreated to Dino's truck, where Kishnik accepted $1,000 in cash from Delisio in exchange for supporting the renewal of the Delisio contract and its extension with Troy. Now, in a press release that the City of Troy released on August 23, 2018, it was stated the city is cooperating with the ongoing FBI investigation into this matter, including a dinner at a local restaurant that was allegedly attended by other employees and elected officials. If any additional wrongdoing is revealed by this investigation, city leadership will take action. So part of the healing process after 2018 is restoring trust in the decisions we make, and that includes letting our residents know all relevant information to how decisions are made or perceived to be made. In the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I request all of council to disclose their interactions with Delisio beyond what was discussed and voted on in public council meetings. This is a nearly $2 million contract, one of the largest we'll approve in an entire fiscal year. The bigger the contract, the more sunlight and disclosure is needed to maintain or restore trust. My interaction with Delisio, other than public city council meetings, is none. I was not at or aware of the meeting at the Troy restaurant. I'm not aware of any other meetings with them either. And I was only made aware of them by public statements. I ask other council members to disclose if they attended that December 21st, 2017 dinner or were aware of it ahead of the public disclosures, if they were aware of the driveway replacement and when, or any other meeting or information about Delisio and Kishnik. And I ask if, and that's my request for council. Thank you.
Any other comments regarding JI? I didn't see anybody, so I'm going to ask to postpone this item until after we get the results of the forensic audit. Part of that press release on the 23rd talked about the forensic audit, and if I could just get City Attorney Bloom to give us an update where we're at with that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is something that is now in the hands of our forensic audit company, and it's Plant Moran, and they are working on it. They have apologized for the delay. They said that there have been some unexpected other court dates and other things that have taken priority. And so I do not have the report yet. I expect it in the very near future. The last communication I had was last week, and they said that they were not going to be able to get it done last week. I'm hoping to get that completed soon, and of course, we'll be forwarding it.
Thank you. It would be important to me to know what's in that report before I vote personally on this item. And as far as comments by Councilman Hamilton, it's up to each individual council member, in my opinion, as to whether they want to speak to that or not. So, do I have support to postpone this until after the audit? I'm making a resolution to postpone this item until after the forensic audit.
Support.
Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Pennington to postpone JI until the results of the forensic audit are presented to council and the public. Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
I certainly take no issue with postponing it, although maybe we should have a date certain, because we don't like to postpone resolutions just because, and for an extended period of time. But my question is probably for city staff. Is there a timing issue with this? Does this need to be approved anytime? Are we delaying projects by not doing this at a certain point?
I will make a general comment, and staff can add if I don't cover everything, but our current contract with Delisio does expire at the end of June 30th, so this contract that was before you is started up. If we start going to, let's say, the last meeting of June and to approve a new contractor, it might, excuse me, it might make a scramble a little bit to take care of all the necessary paperwork, but we do have a little time, yes.
Just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
And City Attorney Bloom, I know you couldn't give a date what you thought from Plant Moran, but would it seem reasonable that it would come in the next, within a month? And give it,
I certainly anticipate that it will be in the next month. Again, they've expressed remorse for the length of time that it has taken them. They are doing a very complete and comprehensive job, and so I didn't want to cut that short. I wanted to make sure that it was a very complete report, but I do anticipate that it'll be here very shortly.
If I knew when that was going to be, I would have proposed that date, but I've been led to believe that we should be getting this report very soon. Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is for Mr. Miller. I don't think I've been at a council meeting here at the table or sitting in the audience where a contract was not approved. And so my question is, if we were to vote and the low bidder, who is Delisio in this case, were not voted on or was not supported, what is the process is it just to go to the next lowest bidder? Can you outline the process?
Well, I apologize for correcting you, but we did have a bid change for the tennis bubble contract.
Yes, you're right.
And you have the discretion, what you think in the best interest of the city, to decide upon which vendor to award the bid to.
Okay, there is a motion on the table to postpone. Councilwoman Hoderick.
Having a little bit of stress going back to this place. And I want to be mindful that this is a contractor that we've built a relationship with and has been doing good work for us for a while. Is a low bidder by, I think, some $140,000. So this is a discussion we're having in the spirit of really functioning in a place of full transparency, both on behalf of the city and frankly on behalf, in my mind, of the contractor itself. You know, at the time of sentencing, they did release a statement that that they had become a victim of then City Manager Brian Kishnick's exploitation of his position for his personal gain. And during the course of the FBI's investigation into Kishnick's corruption, cooperated with the government, which included giving things of value to Kishnick at the direction and the approval of the FBI and Department of Justice. So I am in favor of postponing till we see the forensic audit, because that, I think, is the right thing for the healing and the full disclosure. But I also recognize that, you know, looking out for the best interests of the city include taking in the totality of the picture of events that happened. To answer Councilman Hamilton's question, I have not had any relationship with or interactions with Delisio Contracting ever, other than the fact that they were in my neighborhood at one point, and I could have even sought at that time a bid for having my driveway done, as any resident can, and elected not to because I did not want any appearance of conflict of interest. I think that forensic audit and coming in and us looking at this is the right thing to do for everyone involved so that we can make the best decision on behalf of the city going forward.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Abraham.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Transparency is always it's important at every level of government. And while this topic brings up, I think, a lot of bad memories for the seven of us up here, Councilman Hamilton, I think you were right to bring it up, even though I think you can see the angst on all of our faces. I have no problem in answering the question that you have posed. I've never met with Delisio outside of council chambers. I'm not sure I'd even recognize the Delisio if I ran into them. I certainly wasn't at the Christmas party. I was never invited to it. I have no relationship with any Delisio whatsoever.
Any other comments on the postponement? Councilman Henderson.
Just have a couple of questions. My first question, after reading some of the questions that were submitted to us earlier, was Delisio named in the forensic audit? And obviously, we're going to have that question answered soon. Secondly, Mr. Miller, can the decision to award this contract stand the scrutiny of the City Council?
Can you repeat that?
Could the awarding of this contract stand the scrutiny of this council? If we were to award this, you've recommended that we approve this contract. Can that recommendation withstand the scrutiny of City Council?
I believe so, yes. But I'm not exactly sure exactly what you mean by that, though.
Do you have any suspicions that
No.
Delisio was, okay.
I don't have any, all the information that I have available to me are the press releases and what was filed in the federal court. And that's all that I am able to use to make our decisions here. So there's nothing that I can see that specifically says that we shouldn't award the bid.
Okay. And I'd like to ask City Attorney something as well, so maybe that'll help you with a couple conversations as well. But my question to you is, would a lawsuit from Delisio, being the victim of extortion, be defensible?
So that was actually what I was going to, and that's where I thought you might be going, so I wanted to address that. Council has the ability to award the contract to whoever they think is the best contractor to award it to. So you do not need to award it to Delisio, even though they are the low bidder. Now, that's not to say that they won't sue us later on, but again, there's no right to have a contract with the city. And as long as council can articulate the reasons why they decided not to go with the low bidder, and perhaps the reason is because of the negative history, then that is sufficient, and the city has a very defensible position.
One last follow-up. And it's a comment more than a question, is my concern with Delisio and the city manager and the city is essentially, how did they get into a situation where they cooperated with the FBI to pay the former city manager any kind of money? And if that answer is they were just uneasy about not being paid for the driveway, I have no problem with that. If there was some other compelling reason out there that they got in hot water with the feds and then were put into a position where they were forced to try to turn another guy, I mean, that I have a problem with. So it would be nice if the FBI could give us some sort of insight on that. Is there anything that you can tell us that would lend itself to clearing up that particular question?
We do not have that information. The FBI is the sole person that may have that information. They have not implicated or exculpated Delisio to city administration. So we don't have any of those answers for you, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I just have a comment. In my discussions with the FBI, and the advice that they have given me is we need to make the best decisions for the city of Troy.
Councilman Henderson.
Yeah. So my last comment is they've done a great job for a lot of years. They've done some remarkable quick work on our streets, and from that standpoint alone, they're a good vendor. All this other noise, I don't know exactly where to go either. So if we need more time, we need more time, especially with regard to the audit. I would like to see what is unearthed there.
Well, that's the big question for me. And until I see the audit, it's tough for me to make that decision. I'm not here to throw Mr. Delisio under the bus. I've been around this a long time, and I know if it wasn't for Mr. Delisio that Mr. Kishnick would have not been indicted. So that's a fact. Any other, Councilman Pennington?
So a quick question. So if we don't get this forensic report in a timely manner, which we haven't so far, if you could implore to them that, we need this quickly. The question to Mr. Miller would be, is this going to put our contract work with Delisio in jeopardy if we don't have an okay to move forward with them by the time that their contract is up?
We need to make a decision, or City Council needs to make a decision to give us enough time for the July 1st start date of the next contract term. So we have some time, but not a lot. So to answer that, it would be in jeopardy if we were not making a decision by the last meeting in June.
So my follow-up to that would be, we need to employ this company that we've dealt with, that we've contracted, that we need this forensic report, very quickly. Everybody's busy. They need to step up and get that to us quickly.
And I have done that, and I will continue to do that, and they have made assurances, but again, they had intervening court deadlines and other commitments that are just really not something that they could have set aside.
All right.
Okay. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
On the postponement.
On the postponement, yes.
It's postponing. Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you're here on a consent agenda item, they've all been approved except J4G and J4I, which have been postponed. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. K1A is an announcement for a May 6, 2019 adoption of the 2019-2020 annual city budget and three-year budget. May 20th, 2019, there is an announcement for a public hearing for the Reprogram Community Development Block Grant CDBG program for the year 2018 funds. Next on the agenda are public comments for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, so I will call upon Jessica Savia, who has waited patiently, a Troy business owner.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. So I actually oversee operations and marketing for a Blue Moon Hookah Lounge over at 18 in John R. They are looking to see if we can propose the extension on opening up a little bit later. I know that was passed back in like 2013 and went through like a 6-month window, and then it got delayed. So we're trying to see if there's anything on the agenda or if we can have it reviewed or anything like that with some of the new restaurants opening, staying open a little bit later on the weekends. They're not looking for every day, maybe like Friday and Saturday.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment on items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Any council member or staff wish to respond to council comments? My response to Ms. Savia is that we made a decision that I think has been a strong decision by this council. I would encourage you to meet with the police department because I think it would go a long way with this council if there was a different recommendation coming from the police department or staff or the law department. Any other comments? There are no council referrals this evening, so we'll move to council comments. Any comments by council this evening? Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just been sitting here for a couple minutes, and I guess I want to address what Councilman Hamilton had asked. I didn't think it was probably right to talk about it while we were discussing postponing a motion, and not knowing that he was going to ask that, I had to think about whether it was something, this was the right forum to do it. But I have no problem saying I couldn't tell you what any of the Delisio family looks like. I've never met with any of them. I know their name only from the contracts, from the news, I wasn't at a Christmas party. I've never been with them outside of, in fact, I don't think I've ever been in the same room with them. So that's to answer your question, if that helps. I was a little surprised by how you brought it up, though. I will say that. Next time, maybe a heads up. Thanks.
Any other council comments? Councilman Henderson?
Yeah, so I've never been invited to a Christmas party. I have spoken with Delicios. I ran into one of the Delicios at a cigar lounge. He had his name on his shirt as we sat and had a cigar, and we discussed his brother who had been killed in action in the Marines in Iraq. That's the extent of any conversations I've ever had with any of the Delicios.
Any other council comments? I'm not going to comment on that. I don't even know anything about a Christmas party, except for what has been brought up. But
So it's just me, so yeah.
no,
I'm the only one that hasn't commented, so I'll comment. No, I've never, other than Delicios being up in front of us here, I'm sure that we've been in the same room with them because I'm sure they've been here. So we have been in the same room with them, but no, I've never met one personally, or I wouldn't know them either. So to answer your question, Mr. Hamilton, no, I've never had a conversation with the Delicio.
Thank you.
Or never been invited to a Christmas party, or I've been invited to Christmas parties, but not their Christmas party, obviously. Not sure.
I think it may be of note, much of what you read there was statements made by, I believe, his attorney, and I don't think those were accurate statements from what I've heard. But I don't know about any Christmas party, so whatever. Next, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to mention, last week, the Troy Youth Assistance team honored youth in the city that they were nominated for good works that they've done in the community. And it just reminds me again what an amazing place we live, work, and play in, and serve for those of us on staff and council. And the amazing things that the youth have done, many times to support a lot of the things in our community. The Nature Center, for example, was one of them. At any rate, at the end of the presentations and the celebration of these young people, the chair, school board member Carl Schmidt, was mentioning that one of the needs that they have at the Troy Youth Assistance organization is mentors in the community. Many of the youth that were honored that night, they have huge support systems rallied around them, but there are young people in our community who could use an extra special person to provide that extra push to be equally successful. He said typically there are about 50 that are identified as having needs, and right now they have 2 adult mentors. It's not a bunch of time as he described it. I bet there are a lot of people out there, if they knew there was this need, they might be interested in looking into it. If anybody watching or paying attention, or maybe reading the minutes of this later, if you have a response to that, even just a tiny tug, if you look up Troy Youth Assistance, they do have a website, troyyouth.assistance.org. I see Carl Schmidt on Twitter now and again. You could reach out to him that way. It's just another place to help make a difference in the community with our young people and help set them up to be successful.
Thank you. That concludes council comments. Sorry, Councilman Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for answering that. I appreciate it. The other question I had, which I meant to include it with this, but was the comment in the sentencing memo was, even after a councilman who learned about the driveway confronted Kishnick and following a conversation with another public official who advised Kishnick to pay for the improvements, Kishnick never paid for the driveway. Does anyone at the table know who that councilman is or who that other public official is? If it's no, that's fine. I don't know. So again, because this is referencing a $2 million contract, I'd like everyone to get on the record that if they know or don't know who this is. Okay, that's good.
Anything in the reports that anyone wishes to bring forward tonight? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. Therefore, there's no reason for response. There's no closed session this evening. Thank you for coming. We are adjourned.